Welcome to the Cyber Insights Podcast, brought to you by the ISACA Greater Washington, D.C. chapter. I'm your host, Jim Wiggins, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Mr. Altan Bulut. And our guest today is Mr. Mori Ghazzawi, the Director and Chief of Training at Amananet. We'll be talking with Mori about the topic, the human side of digital transformation. Let's get into the episode. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the ISACA-GWDC podcast, where we explore the evolving intersection of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, IT audit, governance, and even privacy from time to time. Today's episode, the human side of digital transformation, examines how organizations can align technology with people and how leadership can ensure innovation truly works for their workforce. Our guest today is well known in the industry. His name is Mr. Mori Ghazzawi. He is the Director and Chief of Training at Amananet, where he drives operational excellence and digital innovation. He's also the Director of Extreme Labs, and he currently today has over 30 years in the technology education, digital learning, and business transformation space. He's got experience in guiding global organizations through training modernization, performance-based learning, and workforce enablement. So we're really excited for him to be with us here today. How are you doing today, Mori?
Thank you, Jim. Happy Sunday. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And I have to make sure I give my shout out to my co-host, Mr. Altan Bulut. He's with us as well here. How are you, Altan?
I'm doing great, Jim. Really excited to get into it. Be part.
Absolutely. Hey, Maury, a lot of times since I've already provided kind of background of you, but one of the things we want to do is maybe kind of level set. And we know that you've, of course, spent your career at the intersection of technology and people. So we
Yes.
were, maybe to kind of get started, maybe from your perspective, when you think of the idea of digital transformation, how do you define it? And why, in your estimation, is the human piece of that, the element, still really considered the most critical factor in success of digital transformation? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. After doing this for so many years, and you and I go back at least 25, 22 years, it's always humbling to understand and see how the milestones continue to change as the technology evolves, right? One of my favorite authors is Malcolm Caldwell. Um, and I always refer to him because he brings insight into other logical or illogical things that people think about. They say, okay, so how come all the European countries always have the best hockey players? And then for the people who don't really think about it too much, they say, oh, because it's cold there. No, it's because they start them early. And my biggest thing for the US, and I'm very worried about the US as a country and the transformation, is that we can talk about AI all day long, we can talk about classes all day long, but unless the infrastructure changes, and this is, of course, country 335 million people, but because the country is so, what's the proper word? Not necessarily centralized. As a result, each state has its own rules and processes for education, right? So Massachusetts, Wisconsin, and Minnesota have the highest, for example, mathematics scores in the whole country. So there's always samples across the country why certain states are doing better. I wish we can have the same thing for IT. Yes, although the US is the leading player in the technology landscape, it's because the majority of people taking the lead are non-US citizens or non-American. They're born in India, they're born in China, they're born in Taiwan, they're born and so on. And then you look worldwide, what's the leading country for IT per se knowledge? Switzerland, Netherlands, Sweden. But those are actually citizens of those countries. So the transformation continues to happen. And of course, now for the last 2.5 years, 3 years, AI has exploded like there's no tomorrow. Obviously, there's a lot of ignorance. People think AI is going to solve the world's issues and landscape. But there's so much that needs to happen to make sure that transformation is not just safe and secure, but it actually benefits human mankind. And ideally, since we live in a beautiful America, is to benefit the U.S. economy, to benefit the U.S. infrastructure, and so on. I know you asked me one sentence and I gave you 30 sentences, but that's how it goes.
No worries, no worries. So, hey, let's build on that. You were talking about some of the challenges or some of the issues that you're seeing out there. What other kind of misconceptions do you think leaders have regarding digital transformation within their own business practices, and so on and so forth? And any thoughts on that particular area or topic?
Yeah, the majority of the companies in America are not large size, right? They're not Fortune 500, right? The majority of the companies in America are 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, 300 people. Those companies are now trying to understand and talk the talk and walk the walk of, how do they go to the next level? How do they engage with AI? What does AI do? What can it do? How can it take their company to the next level? Training revenue has increased tremendously across the board, but is that enough, right? And that's where I say, and I go back to that the education has the IT education has to really start at the middle school, high school, vocational school, and not wait till I grow up and know what I want to do in life. Then I say, oh, okay, I'll take a CompTIA certification. Then I will take something much difficult for me. I'll take an ISACA certification and think that's going to be there. By then, the train has left the station. This is so much, we are lagging so much in this country. We're relying really on foreign knowledge. And by that, I mean body counts, people coming into the country. And, you know, I thought the country would wake up 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and yet there's still a struggle. Somehow, either the politicians have to do a better work, um, the big leaders of the IT companies, meaning the Amazons and the Microsoft, really have to have bigger meetings or engage more leaders in our country to say, listen, yes, we are the leading player in the technology landscape worldwide. However, we are lagging, and this is a huge, huge concern. Uh, people voice it. It's out there. I'm not saying anything that's it's not. This is not an epiphany. It's out there tremendously, but nothing is really happening to fix it. And it's not an easy. It's not an easy fix. You're talking about the infrastructure has to change tremendously, where IT is taught even before middle school, not just okay, all right. So the give you a quick example, right? The students in the U.S. high schools, they go roughly about 180 days a year to school. Japan, 210 to 250. Okay. Germany, 190. Czechoslovakia, 190. Singapore, 200. But it's not just the amount of time the students spend in school, but it's also what they are studying in school so that when they finish high school, they not only know what they want to do, but also you can put them in the sort of put them in silos, and that's how you would increase the population in America to go into more into IT versus, well, let the child decide what they want to do. That's nice, but if we give them more guidelines as they're growing up, most likely we'll guide them into the IT world for monetary reasons, but also patriotic reasons, help the country, help the infrastructure, help the economy, and that just doesn't exist these days. It really doesn't.
Understood, understood. I think Alton's going to ask you the next question. Go ahead, Alton.
Yes, so when we think about the broader landscape, you highlighted many points that people should probably be more cognizant and like embedding IT and technical education as early as possible into the education system overall. But when you think about the companies, corporations, or several various types of organizations that try to transform themselves, like technological transformation, and a lot of transformation projects apparently fail despite significant investment in technology. So, what do you think that might be driving that level of failure in that space? Like,
For sure, without a doubt, It's not because I preach training all day long, but it's because of lack of training. Millions and millions and billions of dollars are spent on introducing brand new technologies to these companies. And yet a small percentage, very small percentage, is dedicated to training. I work with the Department of Defense a lot, and all the example is, when you give someone a gun and you say shoot, but you have to show the person how to use the gun, right? One example that I feel that unfortunately went south many, many times over, SharePoint. SharePoint was installed in so many companies and so many agencies, and yet, unfortunately, totally misused because not proper training was done or provided for the employees, regardless of what level they were, to say, okay, you have a brand new tool, it's amazing. Let us show you why it's amazing. So, to answer your question in one word, training, lack of proper training.
So is there a way for companies to tell like how much training will they need when they onboard a new technology or just decide to change the things that they've been using for decades maybe?
Yes, absolutely. If the company does not have a training manager or someone who understands the value or the ROI of training, they should really push the vendor that's bringing in the technology, right? So when Microsoft sells millions of dollars or Cisco bringing all this equipment and software into these companies, those companies should be pressed. Okay, you're selling us all this new toys, new tools. How are you going to help us understand how to use these tools, right? So I think the leadership from the vendors, sorry, the leadership from the company side really should be educated more or pressed more to demand more from the vendors that they are spending a huge amount of their budget, and yet they're getting the ROI is not where it should be because of the lack of uh, training funding allocation.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Totally makes sense. Jim,
Absolutely. Okay, so we want to move into our next segment. Our next segment is going to kind of build on top of some of the stuff we've been talking with you about thus far, Maury. We know that, of course, you've held leadership roles in training, education, and operations. That's pretty obvious based on both our introduction of you and the dialogue we've had thus far. I'm wondering, how did that shape your view on digital transformation for organizations? Any thoughts on how the experiences you've had in terms of, your role, how it's helped kind of influence your thought process today?
Yeah, it's ironic that after 30 years being in the industry, the kind of questions that I usually ask in a discovery meeting are almost identical. What's the objective? What's the objective? What's the objective? Right? What's the roadmap? What are we trying to do here? Right? And it's amazing the amount of, I'll use the word ignorance without insulting anyone, the amount of ignorance or not knowing. Okay, well, that's why we called you, Dr. Mori, to bring you in and help us understand how do I get my 500 employees, my 50 employees, my 5 employees to understand these new tools and software that we have spent so much money on. Transformation, data science, all fancy words, cybersecurity. You know more than anyone else, Jim. It used to be called network security. Someone made $1 gazillion by saying, "Well, let's call it cybersecurity." Same bloody thing, right? It's all about how do we protect our network? Okay, well, first you have to make sure that the people in the SOC or in the IT support team, tier one, tier two, tier three, are aware and educated enough to know how to protect the network or so-called cyber network. Um, it just continues to baffle me week after week, year after year, that there's still so much ignorance, of the importance of you the IT transformation, technology transformation worldwide. Obviously is faster in some regions versus others. In the US, yes, being the leader, and yet the leader of the world in leading IT technology is lagging, America, which is America. I really strongly believe that there has to be a major reorg of the education system. So basically, two-tiered, right? One is on the elementary, middle school, high school. Another is I wish there'd be more vocational schools across the country. For those people who never finish high school, they want to finish their GED. Nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
Nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
I came to the States in 1982. I lived in food stamps for about 2 years, and I was offered to finish my GED because I finished my high school at the age of 21 because I came from a country called Lebanon, which was going through a major civil war. And I personally refused to take the GED exam. I wanted to get the real high school degree, which I graduated from Winslow High School up in Maine. But I distinctly remember, 1982, of course. Uh, Technology was a typewriter. That was it. That was it. Here we are, 2025. My son is 11 years old, and he's working on ChatGPT. He's working on a laptop. I'm trying to basically brainwash him every day with IT knowledge, what have you. But I wonder how many people like me are trying to advocate or encourage their children, their neighbors, their colleagues to to really drink the Kool-Aid, which is IT is not just important to buy that license, but also to use it more extensively across the board.
Understood. Understood. Okay, so hey, Maury, I know that kind of building on that, in terms of your background, we kind of introduced that you had experience working at Extreme Labs. I know that you've led the design of performance-based learning and assessments that helped organizations modernize workforce development. Talking about this reorganization of the educational system, historically, most assessments, most training has been done kind of uh, in a kind of old school mentality, lectures and PowerPoint slides. I'm curious if you could talk for a moment about how your work in performance-based training has informed your approach to leading operational excellence and what you've seen in terms of opportunities for organizations to maybe change some of that paradigm, to be able to start to think about how they're embracing, performance-based training and performance-based assessment versus the old school way of doing it. And
Sure,
any thoughts on that?
absolutely. Looking back at when the first exams were being provided by Prometric, Pearson VUE, multiple choice, graphs, and that was it, right? Um, you know, Looking also back, why CompTIA was born, right? CompTIA was born, ITIL was born due to the frustration of the industry, and I mean industries, because employers were getting resumes that said, I'm smart. I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree. Also, I have certifications, but not necessarily signifying, is this really person knowledgeable? It took many years for people to drink the Kool-Aid of the importance of the PBT, performance-based testing. And now, today, for the first time ever, companies like CompTIA, for example, for the longest time they had the A plus, Net plus, Security plus, and now finally their Security X, which used to be the old Security, sorry, it used to be the previous CompTIA CASP plus. Now it's called Security X. Um, Finally, it has a few labs, we'll call them labs for the sake of this conversation, that actually truly test the ability of the tester versus checking off the box. But look how many years. I mean, we're looking at 30 years since I started in this industry. I used to go to so many different conferences, and people would talk like there's no tomorrow about the importance of PBT. Um, and CompTIA as a, world recognized organization. It's not just only in the US and Canada and Latin America. It's all recognized all over the world. And look how long it took them, as an example, to get into that, I'll use the word league. So I'm really hoping that the rest of the world, rest of the vendors, at least in the training world, Microsoft, AWS, VMware, Red Hat, and the list goes on, really get more and more into that performance-based testing because I always say if you're a good tester, you can almost like wing it and pass the exam if you're taking a multiple choice question test. However, when you're taking a PBT, it's a totally different ball game, and I really think that will truly advance the level of when people actually get certified. it actually says this person really knows what they're talking about versus they passed the exam. And that's where the challenges are. Today most employers look at least for a bachelor's degree, but more and more, I'm encouraging it too, that people actually get a bachelor's degree because the academic education is second to none for many, many reasons, but also get certified in the field that they're in. If they want to be in the cyber world, okay, take CompTIA, then get into ISACA, get into ISC squared, and so on. Mainly to show that they are truly fine-tuning their skills. They want to get very focused versus all over the place. Yes, I'm an IT expert. What does that mean, right? Yeah, so I'm excited that CompTIA finally got their I'm being polite here, their act together by having a PBT part of a tough exam. But I'm really hoping that the rest of the vendors follow suit in the next year or two.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so building on top of that, I think you'd be a really good candidate to answer this next question. So when we're talking about, maybe moving away from performance-based for a moment, but aligning technology implementation, what kind of challenges do you think organizations face today? What have you experienced? What have you seen out there in industry in terms of trying to determine readiness of the human capital equation part of the workforce? Any thoughts on the challenges that you might have faced or that you might have seen your customers face in trying to align? You talked about AI as a great example. If organization wants to implement artificial intelligence, what kind of challenges do they face when it comes to trying to integrate that in and make sure that the people are ready to be able to use that technology?
Well, we have to, the training industry in the States is just have almost like three segments. You have government employees, and sorry to say it, but the U.S. government is usually lagging a year or two, and we always used to make fun that, oh, what office version are you on? Are you on Office 365 or are you like the government at 2022 and so on? So we have three sectors, right? We have U.S. government personnel, then you have the private sector, and then you have everybody else. So when I say everybody else, a lot of people barely finish high school. And a lot of people do finish high school, but then they don't really know what to do after that. That's why I was advocating having more vocational schools across the country than there are today. Yes, I know all this costs money, but we're the richest country in the world, and yes, I know we're in debt to certain countries, but put that aside, we have the ability to find money and spend it on things in this country. Let's spend it on infrastructure, right? Infrastructure of the education. So the biggest struggle that I always see with whether it's U.S. government, because I work with the U.S. Army intensively, we train roughly about 3,500 personnel every year in Europe and the Horn of Africa, is getting them, making sure not only are they up to date with the latest technologies, but also taking the exams, which basically confirm that they took the class for a week or two, and they, understood at least the basics before they get into real life, which truly is the big test, right? So there needs to be more classes, more training. AI now is the big push. People are uh, saying that they're interested to adopt AI without even knowing what the heck, how it works, And right now, because of the amount of marketing, ChatGPT has the lion's share. It's like the Federal Express of shipping or the Kleenex of tissue or what have you. Right now, ChatGPT is it. So there are so many companies out there that might even compete with ChatGPT, might be even better, but everybody just uses ChatGPT as a generalization. It's great that we have all these tools. It's wonderful that we have these great new tools, AI, and people can finish their school papers much faster, and they can submit a report much neater, nicer reports to the leadership at their companies. But is that enough? We need more education from the employees within, so they understand how to really use it for efficiency, higher efficiency at their job, higher performance. Because at the end of the day, it was created to ultimately help the employers or children and adults in the academic world. But there's so many things that AI can help, and just a matter of they have to be they meaning the population has to understand more and more the value, really understand the value of how to use AI for the next 5, 10, 15 years before we have something new show up at the on the sunrise.
Yes, so Mori, I want to bring the conversation back to the like organizational transformation perspective. When you want to prove the value essentially of training, like demonstrate both for a specific case and maybe for an ongoing, to make a case for an ongoing program that training is very important and it works. How do you suggest that companies or maybe certain sections within those companies might prove that it is actually making meaningful impact? Or maybe would you be able to share an example where investing in people directly improves the efforts around organizational transformation? We can clearly demonstrate if you didn't invest in people, you wouldn't have been as successful.
Yeah, Microsoft, right before COVID, I was running a program on behalf of Microsoft where I went around the country in Canada, and I would provide Pearson VUE exams on Microsoft exams for employees of either Microsoft or employees of organizations that were using Microsoft technologies. And I said, okay, that's nice. So why is everyone taking this exam? Well, we want to show that, in our organization, we have 50 certified Microsoft, techies. And I thought of that for a second. I'm like, okay, so what does that do? Okay. Yes, it's nice that now this company, Bank of Canada, it was a bank, but I can't remember which bank it was. The bank in Canada now, okay, has 50 Microsoft certified employees. To me, it was like, okay, big deal, right? So I think we need to move away from statistics that, okay, we have 50, we have 10, we have 100 certified Microsoft techies or AI techies, but actually evaluate and see the productivity of those employees, right? So by me taking a course on Office 365 and knowing now how to use Excel, we'll use the very basic application, right? Has my efficiency improved? So keeping track of the level of productivity within a company is actually a full-time job. I don't want people to underestimate that, okay, if I take this class, my productivity immediately jumps. No, we have to show these people that by taking this class, by getting certified, they will gain the skill to increase their productivity. So a report they used to generate in Excel or Word used to take them 2 hours. Now it brings them down to 30. So someone has to do that work within and then show it to the leadership and say, okay, on October 27th, 2025, we started with 10 employees that had no past experience in Microsoft Word or Excel. And here we are, dear leadership. We are February 2026, and look at the chart. The amount of reports that we used to generate the year before compared to how it's been in the last 6 months has tremendously increased. And that's because of the training. So the task is not an easy task, but it can be done. It just has to be monitored or managed by someone, either in HR, or if the company is small enough or big enough to have a training manager or someone who understands and respects the value of training and how it can contribute to higher efficiency, higher productivity at the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to follow up on this. There's this dichotomy almost, as you keep hearing the same thing over and over again. This distinction between experience on the job training versus like quote unquote like normal regular training, and what is more important, which one contributes to real productivity gains, like know-how. Um, I want you to maybe comment on that conversation, or maybe I don't think it's too controversial, but people do have strong opinions one way
Sure.
or the other. Especially, I don't know if it's coincidental, depending on where their background falls more closely with, like aligns more closely with, like if they have a lot of experience, but no certifications, no trainings, they tend to, unsurprisingly, favor more on the like you learn on the job. If they do have formal training and maybe like technical hands-on training, but not necessarily 100 years of experience, they tend to favor more the training side. So if you want it to be as objective and impartial as possible, how could you like see that difference, especially when you think about a technical area?
Sure. Absolutely. And that's a great question, by the way. Going to back to what I just mentioned, the gym, that the performance-based testing, the PBTs, really helps. So when the candidate takes that exam and then submits the resume to, the Bank of New York, based on how the exams are created today, that can actually help the hiring person at the Bank of New York really say, oh, you took the CompTIA, I'm using this as an example, the CompTIA Security X, or possibly one of the ISACA exams, because those organizations, ISACA, CompTIA, Microsoft, their exams are supposed to be extremely um, difficult to pass, mainly to prove that when this person actually passes this exam, that they qualify knowledge-wise. And then comes to your point, Alton, is that, okay, that's nice, but what about your hands-on experience, your real-world experience? And that's where I always say that every employer worldwide, but let's focus on America right now, needs to give a chance to those employees, that potential or new employees that really do not come with that real world experience. Now, there's a benefit I always saw in hiring brand new candidates right out of college is number one, they come green. What does that mean? That they're not already stuck in their ways, because, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Well, no, you just graduated from college. Yes, you got your bachelor's. Yes, you have your master's with all due respect. But now that you're joining this company, my company, you have to learn, do the talk and walk the walk, which we will help you gain that experience by being with us. So it's really been a catch-22 for employers the last 50, 60 years. When I say, obviously, employment has been around for hundreds of years, but I'm referring more to the IT world and how certification has gone at the speed of light from being very basic classes. Now the exams are tougher. Now the exams have performance-based testing to really, or at least the hope is that when that person takes that exam and passes it, that they actually show up on day one as a brand new employee, not just with the certificate saying, I have the ISACA certificate or I have the CompTIA certificate, but actually I know a lot already, so please hire me. That I'm actually bringing some value to you besides a bachelor's degree or my certificate from ISACA or CompTIA. I'm actually bringing the value of my knowledge by taking these classes. And I think sometimes that's where companies are stuck in the past in the sense that, oh, they're only certified, they don't have any hands-on. Well, don't undermine the value of training that one can get by taking the soccer class. Don't undermine the training that someone can get or knowledge can gain by taking a vendor's course. That has a lot of value.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably some of those like green candidates, as you suggest, green people like right out of college, maybe with not that many years of experience, might have less of that illusion of knowledge. Like when people don't know something, uh, especially as things change, like a new technology, it is not uncommon to see resistance to admit that people don't know, don't
Absolutely.
understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might see that less often with people with fewer years of experience than
Yeah.
industry
The other
veterans
reason,
sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, sorry to interrupt you. The other reason I like to hire or used to like to hire individuals with very little experience is that I felt that I can mold them
Yeah.
to really follow the track of this company, right?
Yeah.
They might have worked at Burger King before, and now they're working for McDonald's. And I say, okay, listen, I know you worked many years at Burger King, but this is McDonald's. This is a brand new day. We do things differently here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if you get someone who has never worked at Burger King and all of a sudden I hire them at Burger King, I say, listen, you don't have that experience. Guess what? This is how the processes work. This is how we flip our burgers and Whoppers at Burger King. So this is it's sometimes a catch-22. Do you want to get someone that is totally green and you have a chance to mold them? Yes, it might take a little more investment time-wise to get that person up to speed with the knowledge. And of course, now, I got into the food because I'm getting hungry. But talking about IT definitely is not just is the nice thing about restaurants is that you can work as a novice in a restaurant. I did, I my when I came to the States in '82, I did onion rings for 1 year before they took me from one station to another at a small seafood restaurant up in Maine. I'm like, for the love of God, I know how to do more things than just, do onion rings. Sir, you're not ready yet. We have to make sure you perfect the onion rings. Okay. So with IT, because it continues to be such a dynamic world and industry and landscape, people really have to be constantly monitoring what's happening, what are the changes happening. And that's where the value of training, the value of the courses that vendors like ISACA continues to bring to the table are so critical. I'm so happy to finally see a vendor the size of ISACA, a leading company, finally come up with courses that nobody else has, specifically focused on AI. ISC Square doesn't have them. CompTIA says they have them, but you know it's really a mirage. ISACA right now is the only company that has two credible, viable courses that addresses AI and at a very professional level, which
Yep.
which is
Yep.
great news.
All right, so let's build on some of that. As I was listening to you, Maury, I heard kind of an interesting dichotomy show up where we're talking about now from the user's perspective, not so much from the organization's perspective, but you've got people that have knowledge, and then you have people that have performance. Uh, would you characterize that as being like one of the biggest people related barriers, whether the person has the appropriate knowledge or the ability to perform, or are there other like considerations or other barriers that organizations may face when it comes to bringing the right kind of talent in and making sure that from a digital transformation perspective, they're going to be successful? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I speak to a lot of organizations almost every week with their frustration of finding candidates that fit the glove, right? And my biggest recommendation to them is that step one, get a resume that sort of looks attractive. At least start there. You have to start someplace. But the next layer has to be you must have that one face to face. When I say face to face, obviously, ever since COVID, everything's gone virtual. But have that at least on camera and better yet, face to face interview with someone who knows that job position very well and very quickly can filter out is this candidate qualified or not. Because the resume says a lot of things. Yes, there's all these stories that ChatGPT is creating the majority of resumes these days. Okay, let's say that's true, but in an interview room, it's only the HR person and the candidate. ChatGPT is not going to help them anything at all. I mean, unless they have bionic eyes and they can look to the right and left of the screen and answer these questions. So there's a lot of frustration out there, but frustrations are, I call them challenges. When challenges happen, we have to rise to the occasion and be creative. How do we tackle these challenges? And to me, it's very easy. Get that resume first on paper, and assuming it's a 5 star out of 5 star, great. But that's only the beginning of the ride. Next is have that conversation, and one can very quickly ascertain if that person is qualified or not. In the training world, I normally get between 3 to 6 resumes a week from people who say, I'm very qualified to be an instructor. I have all the certifications. I've been doing this for 22 years. I'm a SME in the industry. And then, you know very well, Jim, I love you because you're one of the greatest instructors I've ever met in my life. And I mean that full-heartedly. It's very hard to find Jim Wiggins in the world. People think that they qualify. People think that, well, I have 7 certifications. What's the matter? I have a PhD. And I always have to be um, very straight and forward with them and say, having the certifications, having the credentials is one thing, but presenting, delivering the content in a way that makes the audience understand, appreciate, retain is a separate thing.
Yep. Yep.
So going back to these employers and their frustrations, that can easily, especially for the bigger companies where they have like 3, 4, 5 people in HR, there's zero excuse, absolutely zero excuse. And the bigger companies, what they also do is they create their own internal exams for an IT position for tier one. Okay, here you give them quiz number one. It has 25 questions, or give them a simulation, a lab, and we'll know very quickly if they really qualify tier one or tier two. Now for the non per se hands-on and more on the policy side, then it really requires, and HR is not qualified to have that kind of conversation. They'll have to bring a SME from that company, that says, okay, all right, let's talk about policy. What do you know about auditing? What do you know about this and that? And but if a company wants to offer a job anywhere from 65 to $165,000 a year, they have to invest in the time to interview that person to see this person is a viable person. In addition to the certification, this person is actually qualified to either quickly walk in and run with the position, or with a little hand holding, 3 to 6 months, we'll have that person ready to take over that position. So it's ironic that even though here we are 30 years later, the challenges remain the same. The technology has changed, but the challenges remain the same. And how do we get the workforce up to speed? How do we get the leadership to understand the importance of training? All these things are such valuable things that have been discussed forever, forever. And every now and then I think, okay, company X or company Y has actually gets it, and they have an internal program to counter these challenges. But for the most part, across the board, it's still not there, because they're focusing on certification factory. Okay, let's get 10 people in, let's get them certified, and then we're good. We're actually good. What do you mean you're good? You have 10 people who are certified, but are they knowledgeable? That becomes another phase of training, or making sure that the workforce is actually qualified to do the job.
Understood. Understood. Okay, so we were talking about the intake of personnel to make sure that we've got the right kind of knowledge, skills, and abilities for whatever kind of project that the organization might be going through from a digital transformation perspective. Let's shift for a moment and talk about it from the people that are already there, right? So, a lot of organizations, I assume, rolling out artificial intelligence, we'll use that as an example since that's been discussed multiple times today. How does leadership try to build culturally a certain kind of environment in a way that inspires the people that are there so that they'll buy into rather than resist? I mean, I'm sure people read all the time about AI and say, "Oh my God, it's going to take my job. I don't want to, I don't want to deal with it." But how does an organization deal with that part of the equation? The people you're bringing in, you have a lot more control over because you can dictate to them what they're going to do and how they're going to do it to make sure they meet certain criteria. But how do we kind of revamp the internal staff in order to try to get them to buy in to make sure that this digital transformation effort, whatever it is going to be successful? Make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great question. I'll share a story. 3 years ago, I had to return a love seat back to IKEA. So instead of going, I was told to send it to take it up to Maryland, but they said no, I had to really take it down to Virginia. Long story short, I was already on the road. I went up to Maryland, went into IKEA, put the love seat, and then the manager came out. She said, this really should not belong here. It needs to go down to Virginia. I said, well, employee, your employee, so and so. told me that I can bring it here. And I loved her answer. So normally I would hear, yeah, we have to write that person up, that person has to be fired. And she was very quick to say, okay, no problem. We'll just have to retrain that person. I loved it, right? So simple. I loved it. I loved it. Um, Now, when we talk about how do we transform the existing employees, well, money is always a nice thing to do, right? By you taking this course and getting certified, then you will qualify for a 2% raise on your next evaluation. So money is one. Money always is a nice incentive. That said, you know, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. So there's definitely some you are going to have resistance. There's nothing called a smooth transition. Now, those might be forced to retire, or they might say, I don't need this. I don't need to learn a new technology. I've been here for 10 years. I've been here for 10, 20 years. So that's where a little finesse from the HR office, creativity wise, incentives wise, leading either money, promotion. The DoD has the 8140. The 8140 is very specific. You need to maintain your certifications. You need to take these specific courses. Otherwise, it's a very soft bye-bye. Yes, I know that's very strict and, very black and white, but I see no reason why we can't do the same thing in the private sector, especially for those people who have been there for a while and are resisting to change. We had that huge resistance when they went from one office suite to another. Huge. Because like, no, I'm used to the old one. Why should I change? I like what I had before. And now with the AI, because the AI in its different versions, which is slowly getting into 100 apps and vendors around the world that are coming up with more powerful engines. It's going to put more pressure on the leadership slash employers to really put a good plan on how to not impose, but to actually encourage their employees, existing employees, to embrace the new technologies, but also they need to be educated. We have new technology. We'd encourage you to embrace it because look at the benefits. And then to show example. You got to show example, right? If you go to the Olympics, what are the benefits? You honor your country, you get a medal, assuming you get a medal, and then after that you get endorsements. Okay, I see that. So I train hard, I go to the Olympics, I win a medal, and then I did good for my country, and hopefully I can make money. Okay, all right. So I've been in the company now for 10 years. Okay, so you're now asking me to embrace AI. So instead of just saying, here, embrace it, bye, see you next week. No, please embrace it and look at the example. Here's an example of company Mickey Mouse. This is what they did. They embraced the same program. We're going to provide you training. We're going to show you. We're going to do training every Wednesday in a classroom environment. Then we're going to have a SME go from table to table every Thursday from 2 to 3. Really, at the end of the day, employees are humans. So we have to respect that they have feelings, whether to embrace or oppose any new technology transformation. It has to be respected. And that's why I think that, it's going to be a wake-up call for a lot of companies nationwide, worldwide, and how do they encourage their employees to really embrace this new technology, which is amazing, but the dust hasn't settled yet. Everybody's like, it's Christmas right now. It's been Christmas now for about a year and a half. At some point, hopefully it doesn't crash. Hopefully it'll be a soft landing and say, okay, we'll learn a lot. Of course, a lot of companies will go bust along the way. A lot of employees will be let go due to lack of understanding, and a lot of employees will actually leave their employers because, like, I don't need to learn a new technology. I like the way I was performing before. I'll just join a company across the street. So a lot of work, hard work ahead of us. Technology is great, but it's useless. It's useless if not properly delivered, and the training follows that very strongly to encourage the people to embrace it.
Alton's
Yeah,
going to ask the next question. Go
a
ahead.
lot of great points. I actually want to do a follow-up. We talked about AI a lot. So when we think about like what changes, what fundamental shifts it might bring, a lot of people seem to be of the opinion that AI might obviate the need to have technical skills and knowledge because it's kind of at your fingertips. You can ask it whatever you want. You just need like high level skills, critical thinking skills, judgment, and those kinds of like very difficult, if not impossible, to measure on its own kind of skills. I personally think that critical thinking is enabled by having a background knowledge on the subject matter that we're looking at. Without knowing, for example, what a chair means, you can't evaluate whether the chair is in the right place, for example. Like without having the baseline knowledge or maybe even the subject matter expertise, it's difficult to evaluate AI's output. Is it right? Does it make sense? Is there any hallucinations in it? So there are kinds of like differing opinions, like, and then companies seem to be hesitant to uh focus on training rather than just learn how to use AI and then be smart, I guess. Like, how do you think about that? Like in terms of approach, it seems kind of relatively new that has come with AI now.
Yeah, it's very new, and I'll never forget. I went to a Microsoft conference in the year 2001 in Disney World, California. And there's always a guest speaker from Microsoft, right? And the first thing he or she said, instructor-led training is going to go away. Her words. Instructor-led training is going to go away because self-paced learning is in. So get ready, people. And of course, for for to for those words to be uttered in the opening speech at the annual Microsoft Summit in 2001. Talk about paranoia. All the training companies nationwide, worldwide, like start to freak out. Oh my God, we lost our company. Let's close shop. Um, did self-paced training affect the training industry? Absolutely. Did it affect a lot of trainers to stop training and get full-time jobs? Absolutely. We're going to see the same thing right now with AI. AI is going to cause the layoff, firing of employees worldwide. If I'm going to guess, definitely in a couple million of people being gone, released, because they feel that AI is more efficient doing certain things. But it takes me back to the same solution, which is a great tool is a great tool, but only if people are made to understand how this tool can actually help them benefit to be more effective, more efficient, more proficient um, in their daily role. And to do that, you have the you have this uh, twofold training. One, yes, you can go attend a class, take a class, two classes with ISACA or CompTIA or any of those vendors. That's great. And then actually the internal meaning within the organization has to be almost nonstop. And I don't mean every day, but obviously once a week so that people understand. Did you understand what happened this week? We adopted this new application. We adopted this new program. Do you understand the ROI? How do you see it? Right? Um, it's the majority of the leadership, majority of managers, supervisors out there, they get a new employee, they have an existing employee, they get these new toys. Now it's called AI, and they say, "Okay, here you go. Okay, play with it, and then that's good luck, that kind of thing." Uh, that cannot that cannot sustain because that will only contribute to more ignorance and ultimately more frustration from the employees, existing employees or new employees saying, what, you hired me for this position and it said AI all over it, but I haven't received any guidance. And what's the roadmap? What's the objective? What are we going to do with it? How do you want me to use it? So a lot of money has to be spent, but more important than just money, money is going to be very critical. But the thought process behind it, the actual leadership they have to understand the importance of the vision of what is the purpose of bringing this new technology in. We're going to spend 10,000, we're going to spend 1 million, we're going to spend 10 million. What's the objective? So that, Mori does now 5 reports instead in 1 hour versus 5 reports in 10 hours. Is that the objective? Okay, if that's the objective, then let's make sure that's uniform across the company. And for those who are not able to produce as well as Mori, 5 reports in 1 hour, then we should either retrain them or ask them to leave the company, right? So a lot of
Yeah.
the vision has to really be at a very high level, but also it has to trickle down to the various levels of supervisors
Yeah.
and managers, coaches
Mm.
of these employees. Otherwise, it's gonna be, I don't want to use the word devastating to be dramatic, but it's going to be very harsh on the lab on the sorry on the work environments. Very harsh.
Yeah, definitely. People probably need more training now than
Exactly.
less, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on ahead. We got about 10 minutes left, Maury. We want to
Sure.
talk to you a little bit about the future, right? We always have a section on asking our guests to look into their crystal ball.
Yes.
Right. So we want to ask your opinion on like what kind of trends do you think will most redefine how organizations are going to approach digital transformation in the next 5 years? Any thoughts from at least your perspective as
So
someone
this is not,
in
you're not
training?
asking me to do a wish list. You're telling me what I think might happen, right? Wish list is
Correct.
different,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I know. What do you think is going to happen? If
Oh,
someone
goodness.
wants you to predict the future, what does that look like? What kind of technologies, what kind of capabilities do you think are going to be important in the next 5 years?
I
We've
think
talked
that,
about AI, but go ahead.
yeah, I'm hoping that because AI is not an easy tool. I think once AI, well, sorry, to get AI to a point of being understood and respected, I'm really hoping over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years that more thought and more training is provided to the masses so that they understand what they're dealing with. I think that's has been lacking, is lacking today. Um, but I have to go back to what I started this session with you initially, is that the infrastructure of the education really has to really change. Otherwise, we're always going to be reliant. America's always going to be reliant on foreigners, uh, and no dig, right? I'm a foreigner. I'm Japanese Lebanese, um, coming into the country and making a difference. Well, how about we work on it so that the U.S. citizens, U.S. Americans, I'll use the word Americans, actually do make the difference, and they truly not America not only remains as the leader in the landscape, but actually leads it with population too, and not just we have Silicon Valley, we have all these wonderful companies that are sprinkled all over the country coming up with amazing ideas, and yet we're still reliant on the I'll use the word foreigners or foreign workforce. Um, so back to your question, which is always tough, which is training, awareness, providing knowledge that yes, you're giving us as an employee, you're giving us these amazing tools. We hear it on Fox and CNN every day, AI this and AI that. But actually, don't just give me the tool, hand me the tool with a nice box with a nice ribbon, but can you show me like how it works? Can you train me how it works? Can you show me what the ROI is? And this way I can really will be excited about it versus intimidated by it.
Yeah. So, I want to ask about the role of AI again, like in terms of when we think about the workforce growth, do you see AI as a potential accelerator or disruptor for that, like in terms of both the capabilities of the workforce in total, and like how would that impact the ecosystem going forward?
I think it's already been a disruptor. It's caused a lot of paranoia in the workforce. Definitely, definitely, definitely. And uh, a small factory in Zimbabwe might not be affected, or a small factory in St. Louis, Missouri might not be affected. But when you're looking at the world economies, whether the top 5 or top 10 economies, there's definitely been a huge disruption And that disruption can only go away um, when proper education and awareness is made about what AI can do. Then I really believe it can become an accelerator. Then I really believe it will become an accelerator because that's when people are aware that, oh my goodness, now I understand what this tool can do for me, for my company, for my life. Versus right now, it's just lots of gray. I wish it was all black and
Yeah,
white.
yeah, definitely a lot to think about there. And it's not a it's not a small concern, obviously. It's global
Yeah, it's
in its
global.
impacts. So
Thankfully, billions and billions of dollars are being spent. But I read a lot of articles every day, and I rarely see the word training. I rarely see the word awareness. It's more like adoption. It's great, excellent. But part of the adoption needs to be training. You
Yep.
have to make people aware
Yep.
and
yeah,
not just, you need to adopt this. Company X is going to adopt that. That's excellent. And how are you going to train us, employees that serve this company in a very loyal way? How are you going to help us understand and respect these new applications, need new tools to take the company to the next level? So I'm hoping it will be a true escalator, um, but we're not there yet. We're
yeah,
not there.
Okay, Maury, so we've only got a few more minutes left. Let's real quickly do the lightning round. This is where we do short, sharp insights for our audience.
Okay,
So we're just going to ask you a quick a question and just whatever comes to mind, just really fast, not one word, one small sentence, whatever, all right?
sure.
So first question for you is one common mistake leaders make during digital transformation.
Lack of proper preparation.
Okay. And then the second one I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to turn it over to Altan for a couple, is a go-to principle you rely on when managing large-scale change within organizations.
It's the same one I've been using for the last 30 years. Have a uh, very down to earth discovery meeting.
Awesome, awesome.
okay.
Altan?
So yeah, the most underrated leadership quality in times of transformation.
Oh goodness. Um, Repeat that one more time. Make sure it sinks in.
The most underrated leadership quality in times of transformation.
Underrated.
Yeah.
You want the ISACA answer? It's lack of management support.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but I thought about that. That shows up on all the ISACA exams. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I praise leaders of all organizations every day because they have the pressures on them to run that company as a CEO, as COO, CTO, and what have you. So there's a lot of pressure on them for their companies to produce and make huge money for their stockbrokers, shareholders, and so on. Um, but I always say you're as good as the people that are part of your team. So I think that these these leaders have to truly surround themselves with smart people based on today's criteria, not last year or the year before. Because 2 years ago, AI was barely people didn't even know what it truly meant. Um, yeah, so I think it's mainly um, that the single leader cannot do the dance all by themselves. They must surround themselves with very smart people to embrace this huge new um, transformation called AI.
Awesome. Yeah. So over to you, Jim.
All right, awesome. All right, well, Maury, we're going to go ahead and close it out. We want to thank you for coming in and sharing your insights on the human side of digital transformation. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Did I hit it right? All good.
It was fantastic. Thanks a lot.
Uh,
Phenomenal.
Alton, very nice meeting you. I hope to meet you at the next Osaka event. And
Absolutely.
thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking your time on a Sunday evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
All right. So for everybody else that's listening, we want to thank you for tuning in and listening to the ISACA-GWDC podcast, Cyber Insights. Hopefully this conversation reminds us that technology is only as powerful as the people that are behind it, and the role of training, education, and awareness, and how powerful that can be in helping invest in the organization from a digital transformation perspective. To our listeners, we want you to hopefully stay engaged. Feel free to reach out to the ISACA-GWDC's chapter. You can find more about the chapter at the chapter's website. That's www.isaca-gwdc.org. You can see lots of upcoming events in terms of training, kind of alluding to what Mori was discussing. Also, obviously, meetings, conferences, and guess what? The podcast is up there as well, too. So if you want to take a look at some of prior episodes, feel free to do that as well. With that, we're going to go ahead and sign off, and we look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.